All right, good morning. Thank you for joining us here at Decor Roofing today. We're going to kick off a series the next several weeks, and actually the next 5 to 7 weeks, talking about leadership. And I'll kick us off today, but I'm really excited because over the course of the next several weeks, we've got a lineup of some very special guest speakers. I'll kick us off today. Next week, the 12th, Pastor Orlando from the Bridge Church will be coming to speak. Following week, we'll have Mark Tedford, CEO of Tedford Insurance and a state representative here for Oklahoma. The following week, the 26th, Pastor Orlando will come back. We'll move into November 2nd. Chris Kaiser with Fellowship of Christian Athletes will step in. November 9th, we'll have Sean Copeland, CEO of Regent Bank. And then I'll probably close it up on the 16th. That'll put us all the way to the 23rd, week before Thanksgiving. And we'll see if we can get Dwayne, our CEO, to help us with a Thanksgiving message. So we got a great lineup coming up. We've got a lot of cool speakers. These are great men of God. They're successful not only in their walk in faith and their walk with Christ, but also they each have specific businesses or church organizations or things they lead, and they're all going to share their thoughts on Christian leadership. So when we think about being a leader, the world really needs Christian leadership right now. We need it not only in our businesses, we need it in our schools, we need it in our government, we need it in our locker rooms, we need it in our churches as well. Every walk of life requires some sort of leadership and guidance. And what better leadership and guidance than to have men and women of faith in those positions? Now you may think, well, I'm not in that position as a leader. I don't own a business. Well, it's not just business. In fact, in business, you don't even have to be an owner or a CEO or a high-level executive. You might be a manager. You might be a supervisor. You might be somebody just assigned a specific job project or in a team working together. We all have responsibility to lead and be held accountable to each and every individual around us. And if you say, well, that still doesn't apply to me. Well, think about your home. You're the leader of your home. You might have a leadership role in your neighborhood, your apartment, in your church. Maybe there's some group, organization you have. Maybe you have a cheerleading squad, a Girl Scout group. Maybe you coach some young people. Maybe you lead a Bible study. Maybe you just get together with friends and play some games or card games. Whatever it is, you have an opportunity to lead with the love of Christ. So today's message is entitled, Be a Leader. And this is how we're going to kick it off. First, I want to talk about do goals, D-O, the things we do goals versus who goes, W-H-O. Now, a do goal is I will do more to lead people. It's an action. It's something you're going to do. It's a goal or objective. This is my do go. But a who you are, a who goal says, I will be a leader who leads by example. So there's a difference. One thing is, this is what I'm going to do. The other one is, this is who I am. Now the best leaders start with who they want to be as leaders. And then, after they identify who they want to be, that allows them to decide what the do items are that will follow. Because when you know who you are, then you know what to do. You are a child of God. Until you understand who you are as a child of God, you really don't know what to do in life. But as you become a child of God and we acknowledge that, now we know the things we need to do. We need to minister. We need to serve. We need to lead and love. Think about the movie The Lion King. Late in the movie, Simba had ran off from his problems and was just living in the jungle, hanging out with his buddies, partying. And that crazy little monkey, Rafiki, came to him because there was problems at home. And that little monkey stuck his finger in that lion's nose and says, "You don't even know who you are." And he didn't. He had become lost. And he had to realize he was the son of a king. He was the son of Mustafa. He'd forgot who he was. And because he didn't know who he was, he didn't even know what he was doing. But once he realized who his father was, that he was the son of a king, he then became clearly aware of what he had to do. He had to go back to Pride Rock and face the evil Scar and reclaim the land. Now, Jesus is the most influential leader in history, without a doubt. He's the greatest leader of all time. His do list is very impressive. He turned water into wine. He walked on water. He raised people from the dead. He healed blind people. The things he did was so impressive, it goes on and on. But his ministry here on earth was more importantly about who he was. He did great things. He has more leaders and more followers than anybody in the world. He's the main character in the best-selling book of all time. That's still the #1 seller each and every year. But it wasn't because of what he did. It wasn't because of his do list. It was because Jesus knew who he was. He was the sacrificial lamb. He was the Son of God. Because he knew who he was then able to clearly define what his to-do list was. In John 14:6, Jesus answered, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Now that's a powerful statement. Jesus is telling you who he is. He understood who he was. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He knew who he was. Therefore, he knew what to do to carry out the work his Father sent him to do. So let's jump over here on some things to become a leader. First, there are some things we have to start doing, and there's some things we have to stop doing. Your first step to becoming a leader is starting to work on who you want to become. Before you can set any goals and objectives for your business, for your church, for your youth group, your organization, your football team, your family, you have to work on who you want to become, and you have to identify who you want to become. As a CEO, you have to say, this is who I am as a CEO. These are the characteristics and traits. This is who I am. As a coach, you have to say, this is who I am as a coach. My team's going to be fast-paced, up-tempo. My team might be grinded out and play defense and run the football. I got to decide who I want to become before I can decide how to do it. As a parent and a grandparent, you have to decide who you want to be as a parent, who you want to be as a grandparent before you know what to do. Your first step is identifying who you want to become. The second step is stopping things you do that are slowing you down. So think about as a business leader, maybe you just have an inordinate amount of meetings and they're just sucking time out of your day, and it's just meetings after email, after phone call and meetings, and you're just trying to do too much, and you have to stop some of those things and reorganize them. Think about the actions, how you act, how you talk to people, how you represent your company, how you represent your team, how you represent your family. There may be things you do that you really just have to sit there and go, that's not who we are. Those aren't the actions, behavior. That's not the tone I want to have with people. That's not how I want to be. I've got to eliminate some things. I need to look in the mirror. Because when I look in the mirror, I see how my staff will look. I will see how my players will look. I will see how my children will look and behave. So I have to identify who I want to be. I have to look at what I'm doing and then ask myself in the mirror, is that what I want my followers to do and be like? You see, a good leader creates efficient processes and they eliminate redundant tasks. Recently, Google said they had a goal to become 20% more efficient. And it was asked, how are we going to do that? Are we cutting 20% staff? Is that 20% salary? And their CEO said, you got to think differently. If it takes 10 people to do a project, how do we do it with 8? That's 20% efficiency. If it takes 10 steps to complete a task, is there a way you can do it in 8 steps and become 20% more efficient? You see, the people you lead watch you. The people you lead evaluate you. They evaluate your work ethic. How hard do you work as a leader? They evaluate your behavior, how you treat others, how you talk to others. Are you on time? Do you put in the hours? How hard do you work? Because the bar you set is the bar they're going to gravitate to. They look at your habits. Are you honest? Do you act with integrity? And that's what they will follow. And those rules apply to every walk of life, whether you're a coach or a parent or a church leader. Your work ethic, your behavior, and your habits are constantly being evaluated, constantly under scrutiny. So you have to identify who you want to be and what things are you going to do, because whatever those are, that's how your staff, your team, your children, that's how they're going to act and behave, because they're going to assume those are the acceptable standards for which the leader has set. Parents are probably the greatest leaders out there, because it starts in the household, and you start with a child at a young age. How you act and behave and the example you set for your children are most likely going to be how they act and behave as they become older. Your children are going to be a reflection of who you are as a parent, because what we do imprints on their brain. They see our actions, they see our behaviors. They watch and listen much more closely than we could ever imagine. And children always want to emulate their father or their mother. And just like Christians, we should emulate what Jesus set by example. We should try to act like our Father in heaven. Never ask someone to do something you would not be willing to do yourself. Think about military leaders, very hierarchy structure. It's really hard for a military leader to tell a subordinate to charge that machine gun nest, go attack the enemy if they're in a foxhole hiding, if they're scared. Because that person's going to say, you go do it. If you're not willing to jump out there and do it, no one's going to do it. Lead by example. I once met some guys that worked for my father. We were on a job site, and they were bragging about him. They said, the reason we work so hard is anything he asks us to do, we know he's always done, and if we weren't here, he'd do it himself. And so it was their example that the leader set, that they knew they had a standard to live by. Hebrews 12:1 says, therefore, remember, I always say, if you see the word therefore, perk up. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. What this saying is, we're constantly, as a leader, you're constantly being watched. You're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. As a coach, your players are always watching you. As a church leader, as a pastor, your congregation is always watching you. As a business leader, a CEO, your company, the staff, your employees are always watching you. Because what you do is what they're going to do. And this says we're surrounded by witnesses. So let us get rid of all the sin and all the negative stuff and all the things that slow us down. And let's throw that away to the side and focus on what's important, and let's run the race that God has set before us. So how do we do these things and become successful as leaders? Surround yourself with people to empower. You got to have the right people around you. If you're a coach, you got to have great assistants. If you're a business owner, you got to have great managers. If you're in the military, you better have some good sergeants. Whoever you are, you've got to have some people around you to help you. We can't do it alone, but you have to be willing to empower those people. See, your business does not succeed by what you do. It succeeds by who you empower. A great head coach does not win games by himself. It's the assistants that he empowers. The pastor, it's the staff that he empowers. The teacher, it's the assistants, the people around them that they empower. Think about the FANG stocks, F-A-N-G, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google. They're called the FANG stocks. Four big. Each of those companies has very eccentric and dynamic CEOs. They're like rock stars. And we watch them, and they make comments, and they're always in the news, and we read their tweets and listen to their press conferences. But those companies are not successful just because of who those leaders are. They're successful because those leaders put some very talented, knowledgeable people underneath them. And they empowered them to go do the work. They empowered them to run that business while they're off jet-setting around, pubbing up the company and generating support and presenting to bankers and investors. It's the people behind the scenes that make those companies successful. You see, you can have control over your work, or you can have growth, but you can't have both. If you take total control, you won't grow because you're going to be limited by your own time and energy and how much you have to do. But when you empower people to act on your behalf, your business will prosper and grow. Jesus even had 12 disciples, and he empowered those disciples, and he gave what was called the Great Commission. Go. Great companies have research and development staffs, and they are allowed to have trial and error, and they're allowed to fail, and that's okay, because they have to continue stretch and test their imagination. Goals fail without the proper support system. Goals don't fail because the goal was bad or too hard. Goals and objectives don't get met because as leaders, we don't put in the proper support system to lift up and support those people. Create a system that enables those you empower to operate freely. Initiate the relationships with those people you put in place, and delegate authority. A coaching staff, a head coach has to have a great offensive coordinator and a great defensive coordinator. If the head coach is over there talking to his defense while his offense is on the field, he's not running his team. He's now become one-minded. He has to trust that his coordinators are handling those units. That head coach has got bigger things to think about: time management, timeout, situational calls. Great CEOs and business leaders have to be able to allocate resources, to delegate authority, and to allocate funds to the most profitable sources. To be a leader, you have to empower people and entrust them and be able to relinquish some of your power. Jesus was the perfect example of this. In Matthew 28, verses 18 through 19, then Jesus came to them and said, he's talking to his disciples, and here's what Jesus said: all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, there's our key word again, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So Jesus knew who he was. He even said, all authority on earth has been given to me. God gave him all the power. God was the chairman of the board and said, you're my CEO, Jesus. You've got all the authority and the power. You make the call. And what did Jesus do with that? He got 12 disciples and he said, go and make all disciples. You go and get the work done. I'm giving you the authority. I'm delegating. You go. And we can do this together. We can spread the Father's word. As a business leader, we have to take appropriate risk. We have to go out on a limb sometimes, because that's where the fruit is. The fruit's always at the end of the limb. The fruit's not by the trunk of the tree where it's safe and sturdy. The fruit hangs at the end of the limb. And sometimes we have to take the risk to go out on that limb to pluck that fruit. So let me ask you this. Evaluate where you're at today as a leader or as a Christian or just in your own personal individual space. If you want to be who you've always been, the same person, doing the same thing, if you want to be the person you've always been, then do what you've always done. Just keep doing it. You keep doing what you've done, you'll keep getting what you've been getting. And if that's really good, that may be positive. You may not need to change much. Just be aware that the environment will change around you. But if you want to change who you are as a CEO, you want to change who you are as a parent, if you want to change who you are as a coach, as a teacher, as a pastor, whatever role you have, if you really want change because you want more out of life, then you're going to have to change what you do. So identify who you are and decide what it is I need to do and what it is I need to stop doing. Change your routine, change your habits, change your meeting schedules. You want to lose weight? Change your workouts, change your diet. You want to have a better team? Change your practice schedule. Whatever you do, adjust. Albert Einstein said it best. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And aren't we like that? Do we sometimes not fall into that realm of insanity? I want different results. I want a different life for me and my family. I want a different life, a different power, a different spirit in my church. I want my business to be more successful. I want my team to win more games. But you just keep doing the same thing over and over. You keep repeating the same routine, the same habit, the same practices. Albert Einstein said that's insanity, and he's right. Think about the story of Zacchaeus in Luke 19. Remember Zacchaeus? Y'all are humming the song, aren't you? Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see, right? We all did that in Bible school. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and he was basically a thief, a cheat, and a flat-out known sinner, and was not very well thought of, as most tax collectors aren't in his community. Jesus coming to town, Zacchaeus climbs up in a tree because he's a little bitty short guy and he can't see over the crowd. So he gets up on a tree and he goes out on a limb because he wanted to see Jesus. That's where the fruit was. He had to get out on a limb. And when Jesus came by, Jesus reached the spot. He looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So Zacchaeus took him home, and the people began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. And as Zacchaeus and Jesus was having a decision, Zacchaeus knew who he wanted to become. He wanted to become a follower of Christ. But he spent his whole life cheating and robbing people. And he said, look, Lord, here now I give half of my possessions to the poor. He was a very wealthy man. And in the presence of Jesus, he said, I'm giving half of everything I have to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times that amount. So for every time he overbilled or overcollected taxes and skimmed a little off the top and cooked the books, whatever he was doing, he was going to pay it back 4 times. Because he knew he couldn't become who he wanted to be if he continued to do things the way he did them. And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Jesus knew who he was. He had all the authority, and he delegated. And what did he come to do? To seek and to save the lost. Proverbs 3:5 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your understanding." So as we wrap up today, you want to become a better leader, you want to become a better person, you want to become a better Christian, pray for wisdom, pray for change, trust God with the answers. So to recap what we talked about today, there were 6 main points. Start becoming who you want to be. Figure that out first. Stop doing the things that get in your way. Number 3, surround yourself with the right people. Number 4, build systems that support your goals and objectives. Number 5, initiate relationships. You can't accomplish anything if you don't have relations with people around you and you don't get to know them, because when you know them and they know you, that's when you build unity and a common like mind. And number 6, take the appropriate risk. Lead in whatever role God's put you in today. It's not about titles. It's not about income. It's not about status. Leadership is a servant mindset. Jesus said it's about towels, not titles. He took a towel and wrapped himself and washed his disciples' feet. Leadership was about serving others. And it's about sharing your knowledge and your talents to build up others. You are a true leader when you build up those around you. So lead today, and in everything we do, let's lead for the glory of the kingdom of God. So next week, we'll start off with our guest speakers. I hope you dial in. This will get us kicked off. Have a great week, and we will see you next week, and I'll introduce our speaker at that point. Have a blessed week.